Welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. Happy October. As we do in the beginning of every single month, we are taking a look at a 2026 Senate election prediction for the upcoming midterm elections. On your screen right now are 35 states that have all races in November of 2026 that will help determine the balance of power between Democrats and Republicans as we look to the next midterm cycle as a very interesting one that might be able to set up Democrats and Republicans to either Republicans hold on to the Senate majority through the end of the decade, or Democrats having the opportunity to win it back in 2026 or 2028, depending on the circumstances of the year. Now, of the races that are not up for re-election in 2026, Democrats currently hold 34 of those races. Republicans currently hold 31, which means Republicans are defending more seats than Democrats on the national stage. But the 2026 election map is one that, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, might have Democrats and Republicans feeling grateful about some of these races that are up for election in this upcoming midterm. It's sort of a double-edged sword here for Democrats. On one hand, they should be happy. They are not defending territory in states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Arizona and Nevada, all states that found themselves going from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024. However, Democrats are also going to be playing a lot of defense while simultaneously having limited options for pickups on the national stage. To tell you exactly what Democrats and Republicans also should be seeing as benchmark and baseline performance metrics for the midterms, Republicans right now have the Senate majority of 53 to 47. Democrats are in a position where they are trying to win back control of the U.S. Senate, but it's not going to come easy. Because J.D. Vance is the vice president, Republicans only need 19 out of the 35 races on your screen right now in order to win that majority. Just 19. So you're talking roughly half of the seats here. Democrats would need tremendously more. Now, thinking about where we are at when it comes down to, building out this map, we have all of the safe states to characterize, which means we can spend most of our time talking about the races that are actually the most important. And so on your screen right now, you have 35 races, but in actuality, the ones that are going to be the most important and the most narrow are going to find themselves to be far and few between across the board. So let's go ahead and get started in characterizing all of the states that are safe for the Democrats, safe for the Republicans, and that ultimately, build up this this congressional map or this Senate map for the 2026 midterms. To start off, I'm going to characterize all of the states that we deem as safe for the Republican Party. These are states like Wyoming and South Dakota and Montana and Idaho, and if you're interested about the margins, they can be found in the description box down below. But these are all states that are characterized by margins of roughly 15 points or more, meaning that we expect Republicans, for instance, to win West Virginia by 25 points, or Tennessee by 33, or Kansas by 16. These are all, estimates, but they all share a characterization, and it would be almost nearly impossible to see a reality in which the opposition party, in this case the Democrats, win any of these states. Now that puts the Republicans at about 45 across the map here. Obviously, more opportunities for the Republicans to win than just these, but as it stands at baseline, I really don't expect, even in some of these other states, maybe like Alaska, Nebraska, Texas, Florida, I don't expect the Republicans to win by a margin of anything more than 15 points, and if anything, it's probably a bit more narrow than we otherwise might think, because 2026 is a good year and expected to be one for the Democratic Party. Now, on the note of the Democratic Party, they have their own safe states as well. States like Delaware are very locked in for the Dems, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Illinois, Colorado, Oregon. These are all states that we can pretty much count on. Fast forward to a year and a half from now, who's being sworn in and what margin do they win by? It's probably Democrats in all of these states by pretty considerable amounts. Now, historically speaking, Colorado is actually one of those states that we had not always had as safe for the Democrats until recently. Kamala Harris won the state by 11. I think it's very reasonable to believe that Hickenlooper, who's up for election in this time, will be very solid and locked in on the race. I do believe we're kind of at this point where Colorado is going to be won by the Democrats by maybe 16, 17 points, including on the governor level. We'll see. For now, I'm going to say we're going to play it safe, keep it safe. Democrats win Colorado. Another state that's going to join the bunch as safe for the Democrats here is the state of New Mexico. Now, in my last prediction, I had it as likely for the Democratic Party, but upon reviewing the 2024 cycle, looking at Harris's performances, Martin Heinrich as well in that race, I'm more convinced that with what we're seeing in terms of the reversion in support amongst Latino voters from the GOP, given that, the 2020 race was a much more narrow one because no one was really paying attention to it, I do think 2026 is a dramatically different election. And I do think with that, New Mexico moves over into being a state that Democrats can probably win, by 15, 16 points, especially since Republicans and their targets are going to be focused elsewhere. Minnesota's the last state that we haven't characterized as safe for the Democrats, but deserves the characterization. Royce White is the Republican frontrunner on the GOP side for Senate. Lost his race a year ago by the same amount, roughly 16, 17 points. No doubt in my mind that in 2026 is going to be a better year than 2024 when he already lost the race by 15 to 16 points. So that brings us down to about 13 remaining true toss-up races. Now, true toss-up doesn't actually do it justice. I do not think that we are in a position where we can say reasonably the Democrats are within reach of a state like Alaska or Florida, but I do think that they are going to be more narrow. I do think that these are going to be races that Republicans are going to have to invest some money in, be a bit more cautious about where they stand in the race. Maybe they could be caught sleeping under the right circumstances, but as it stands right now, with the incumbents and the candidates that are in the races, I'd make the argument that Florida right now and, Alaska are going to be states that join the bunch as likely for the GOP. Now, Alaska is one that I actually want us to take a closer look at in the future. Mary Peltola has seemingly indicated that she wants to run for office. I don't know if she's going to go for Senate. I think if she goes for Senate, the race immediately narrows down to lean for the GOP, a dramatic shift away from what we're expecting right now. But if it isn't Mary Peltola in Alaska, Dan Sullivan will probably win by 12 to 13 points across the state, maybe more, maybe less, but as it stands right now, Alaska will be competitive if Peltola enters into the race. Right now, I'm not convinced that she does. Florida, this is going to be an easy one for Republicans. Not much here for Democrats that they should be investing in the race. It's a foregone conclusion. The GOP will win it, but Trump only won the state by 13. Republicans are probably winning it by less. So, GOP at 47. They have some other states, too, that we can characterize as likely, but we're going to start off with some of the Democratic states. New Jersey, Virginia, New Hampshire. These are all states that just straight off the bat, I would make the argument, are likely for the Dems. New Jersey, pending the 2025 result, we'll see. Maybe that one actually could be safe for the Democrats under the right circumstances. In Virginia, we'll also see, too, depending on what Spanberger wins by, we could very well see it move over into a position where, Democrats are blowing the Republicans out of the water there like they did even in 2018. A great example of a very solid race there for Democrats in the Senate. Tim Kaine won that race by 16 points against Corey Stewart. Corey Stewart ran for governor the year prior. This is a race that I do think that is a great example of a MAGA candidate versus a normie Dem. That Democrat wins here. Yes, an incumbent. Yes, someone, worth talking about, but thinking about 2020, for instance, Mark Warner won the state by 12.1, and Republicans actually invested in Virginia in 2020. I doubt they will in 2026. So we'll keep it on the back burner. We'll see. For now, though, Virginia, likely for the Democrats. New Jersey, likely for the Democrats. And Chris Pappas in New Hampshire, also likely for the Democratic Party. Not much hope there for the GOP. Maybe a bit of a narrowing race. But ultimately, New Hampshire voted for Harris, voted for Clinton, voted for Biden, voted for Obama twice. Chances are it's voting for the Democrats in 2026. So that brings the Democrats to 45, but I already mentioned that Republicans have some other states that they can still count on as likely for them, but it really is narrowed down. I'd start off with Nebraska as a state that might surprise many of us in, how much we might find the Republicans actually underperforming. Pete Ricketts is the incumbent senator there. He was the governor of the state as well. He is in this position where he was appointed, ran for a full term in special election rather in 24, now up for a full term in 2026. Dan Osborne, the independent who got Nebraska down to a 6-point margin in 2024, is running in 2026. Sorry about the voice crack, but thinking about 2026, Dan Osborne could make this race competitive. I imagine it'll be a 5 to 6 point race as well. Pete Ricketts is more likable, more electable than Deb Fischer, but better circumstances of the year. I think Nebraska still finds itself around the same margin. The GOP holds on to Nebraska. The state of Iowa, too. I think I'm kind of at this point where without Joni Ernst, Democrats don't really have much hope there. Ashley Hinson, she's not amazing as a candidate, but is an outperformer and turned her district from being closer to solid red when she was in the House. She's still in the House. I think that Iowa, for now, Democrats obviously have a much better shot at the governor election. As it stands right now, though, Iowa is still very much a red state. Trump won it by 13, improved his margin from 2016 to 2024. 2020 even didn't see much movement in favor of Biden. It shifted by just a point when the nation shifted by significantly more. Iowa right now is likely for the GOP, boosting the numbers up to 49. And where do they get 50? Where do they get Vice President J.D. Vance breaking that tie? As it stands right now, I'd say Texas. But this is largely contingent on who the Democrats nominate and who the Republicans nominate. What we will see here is that if it is a Colin Allred, John Cornyn matchup, it's a 12-point race, the GOP wins it, right? If it's Ken Paxton and it's James Tallarico, it's a toss-up. There's a lot that really hinges on who is the incumbent, who is running on the Republican side, who is running on the Democratic side. As it stands right now, though, John Cornyn seems to be slightly improving in the polling data, and given that he's the incumbent, I'm going to assume that he's going to be the Republican nominee for right now. On the Democratic side, it's less obvious. We haven't had much data out of the race since Tellerico entered into the race, but as it stands right now, Texas could be a race that could be dramatically closer or dramatically locked in for the GOP. It just depends on who the Democrats nominate and who the Republicans nominate. As it stands right now, though, I think the safest bet is actually keeping it as a likely characterization for the GOP, and with it goes the Senate majority. But then comes down to the final remaining 5 races: Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Maine. This weird blur and combination of states that Democrats looking at for the 2026 cycle might be saying, first of all, Ohio was never even meant to be here in the first place. When J.D. Vance left the U.S. Senate to become vice president, Ohio now has a special election that will be up in 2028. But Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, and Maine are all races that were competitive in 2020 that are back to being competitive in 2026. Now, Republicans hold 2 of these races. Maine and Ohio. Democrats hold, or 3 of the races, right? And North Carolina. Democrats hold Michigan and Georgia. But what you will find is very interesting is that Democrats, despite winning in Maine on the presidential level in every election since, last time they lost, I believe, was 1988, there has been a race here that they have been unable to win, and that is with Senator Susan Collins. We'll finish off on Maine on that note because I think there's a lot to discuss there. But when it comes down to Michigan and Georgia, North Carolina, and Ohio, Democrats actually win the majority of these races. Now, Michigan, we'll see who the Democrats nominate. I think that we're kind of getting to a point where the Democratic primary is still so blurred that it's going to probably take up until primary day until we actually see who comes through. Will be very interesting to see who the Democrats nominate. But as it stands right now, similar to Texas, I think, depending on who the Dems put forth, this race could be more lopsided in favor of the GOP. It could be more lopsided in favor of the the Democrats. We'll have to see. Haley Stevens, I believe Mallory McMorrow, and Abdullah Sayed are in this race. 3-way primary. We'll see. The governor's race is also competitive, but Democrats still have the upper hand just on the basis that 2026 is a good year for them. Looking over to Georgia, John Ossoff is likely going to win re-election there. Not many people are super thrilled with the GOP list of candidates there. I'm honestly not looking at that race as one that will be hyper-competitive for the Democrats. It obviously is going to be close. Georgia is a close state. Trump only won it by 2. Biden only won it by 1, right? So this state absolutely swings back and forth and is competitive. Ossoff has the incumbency advantage. He's popular. He's out fundraising the Republicans, 10-1. And when it comes down to the GOP's slate of candidates, none of them are amazing. None of them are great for the time. I think Ossoff is going to win that race. North Carolina, Roy Cooper is running against Michael Whatley. Michael Whatley, who has not really faced a GOP primary and won't face one either, had the field cleared for him. My take on this, North Carolina, Roy Cooper easily going to be in this position where he has a cleared field, has an opportunity. Does he easily win? No. It'll be hard fought, and it will be one that will be a narrow margin because North Carolina is North Carolina. But this could very well be the best Democratic opportunity in a Senate election in North Carolina since 2008. And I do think Roy Cooper is the right person for that moment to take it on and win the state. Right now, North Carolina, lean for the Democrats. In the final 2 states, I'd make the argument John Husted, even against Sherrod Brown, is in a good position in Ohio. It's really difficult to see the way in which Democrats win this seat. It is tremendously hard for a state that voted for Trump by, 11 to all of a sudden rebound and vote for Democrats in the Senate. Maybe it could happen, maybe not, but Husted is no extreme MAGA Republican. He's not someone who can tank this race on his own accord. Republicans are probably going to hold on to this one, even against Sherrod Brown. But as it comes down to Maine, this is one that I do think we're going to talk about a bit more, depending on an announcement that we're expecting to see from Governor Janet Mills. But Democrats, I do think, actually have, for the first time in a long time, the slight upper hand with someone like Graham Plattner or Janet Mills as it stands right now. I think the inefficiencies of the government, the federal shutdown today, and just more and more as we start to see pile up against Trump and the Republicans on the national stage is only going to have a snowball effect on Susan Collins, who seems to be very top down, not at all engaged with the constituent base in a very different way than 2020, might I add. And I think that although, this is a race that I've held on long for the GOP, Democrats today have the slight and narrow advantage if they have the right circumstances for 2026, and it looks increasingly more likely like those circumstances are coming. Are they a guarantee? Absolutely not. And is the tilt characterization a stamp of full confidence? Absolutely not either. But as it stands right now, I'd say that Maine, Democrats are potentially in a likelier position than we think of winning the seat than not. And I think that as it stands right now, that gives the Democrats 49 to the Republicans 51 Democrats flip North Carolina and Maine, and Republicans and Democrats hold the remainder of their races. This is where the map stands right now, October of 2025. A lot can change between now and November of 2026. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.